Welcome to Our Sport and our Super Bowl 54 preview show. I'm Larry, I'm your host. John, as always, is doing the recording and editing and providing occasional commentary. We're going to get to the Super Bowl, we're going to get to some Senior Bowl news, but we're going to start with the Browns' new head coach, Kevin Stefanski. And as always, the Browns have this up. This is what they always do. They this up good. All right, let's get into it. You ever wonder why the Steelers and the Ravens are almost always in the playoffs and always do well? Sure, they're great programs. They have a lot of stability. They're well managed. And they're in the same division with the Browns and the sad sack Bengals. That is a good way to always be in the playoffs when you always have to beat just one team to win your division. All right, what's wrong with this hire, you say? Stefanski was an offensive coordinator for the Vikings. Talk to some Vikings fans. Ask what they think about him. I have, and they didn't like him. And then you start looking at the reaction from Vikings fans once he left. They were fine. Doesn't bother me, no problem. That's not good. That's not good when the fans of the team react that way. That's not the biggest issue. The biggest issue for the Browns by far is this institutional control that they want to exert over their coach and what it's based on. Let me explain. They are very, very heavily into analytics. This is a huge cornerstone for what the Browns believe in. Now, if you've heard our channel before, I'm not against analytics. I'm for it. I think it's an important part of football. It's not a new trend anymore. Teams have embraced it to varying degrees. But the Browns are like the worst part of analytics when they're too obsessed with it. They're overboard with it. And it's to the detriment of what you should be as a football program. It encompasses everything for them. It's the entire structure of the program is based on it. That's not how it should be. You should have a limited amount of information you can use from this, and that's what you should base analytics on. It should be a valuable resource. So, John DePodesta is the one who is the executive in charge of the Browns right now. He's basically Stefanski's boss. He answers to the owner, and he's a former baseball executive. Moneyball was based on him and whoever else is involved. I don't watch baseball. I don't know. But he was a baseball executive. Well, you don't get a baseball executive for football because football is different. In professional football, you have people here with 30 years experience. Experience matters. Knowing why the sport of football is different from baseball matters a lot because NFL football is different than college football. It is in a lot of ways. It's almost nothing to do with baseball. So you can't apply some of the many principles you used in that to NFL football. But the Browns believe in it so much. Here's the rumor. Stefanski will turn in his game plan to this meddlesome owner and DePodesta on Fridays before the game and the analytics crew. Now, the Browns have denied this because they have to deny it. They have to tell you this isn't true. Don't believe them. Don't believe them because with the last coach of Freddie Kitchens, there was an analytics expert in his ear during games on the headset. This was mandated by the owner, and that analytics expert did not answer to the head coach. This is fine if the coach wants this. This is not who he answered to. The analytics expert answered to John DePodesta, the executive in charge of this, not to the head coach. You need one singular direction when you run your football team. You need to pick one person in charge, a great football coach, and you need to let him build the crew around him. If you have a general manager that has separate responsibilities and delegations from him, that works with him, that is ideal because that's its own separate job. You do not want generally somebody to be a coach and GM. You want to have a great coach and have him hire a general manager. You want Kyle Shanahan to work with John Lynch. Bill Belichick can do both. Bill Belichick is a unicorn. So, what happened was they had Josh McDaniels from the Patriots as an interview candidate, the offensive coordinator. And he went into the Browns and he says, look, you have to do all these things structurally. You have to change all these things in your program. And what that meant is they were going to have to give him control. And that's why McDaniels didn't get the job. And McDaniels would have been an ideal candidate. So, they got a puppet. Now, you ask, why would Stefanski take this job? Well, you could fail at this job. This is his first NFL head coaching job. Josh McDaniels couldn't, because this would have been his second. You can't fail twice at an NFL coaching job because you'll probably never get another. But if this is your first NFL coaching job, you can afford to take that risk. He's a very young man by NFL coaching standards. And if you get fired, you can always say, well, I work for the Browns. And you can get another job somewhere else. And it's true, though.
That's the excuse.
It's an excuse, but the people around the NFL know. So, and then you look at the history of coaches who are on their second job in the NFL as a head coach. It's pretty good history. Because Bill Belichick's first job was the Cleveland Browns and actually the Jets for a day. Pete Carroll, this is actually his third. He was Jets and Patriots coach. You have a lot of successful coaches who were quote-unquote retreads. And that's why I think McDaniels would have been perfect for this. He had learned from all his mistakes. He's with the Patriots. He understood their culture, offensive mind, from Ohio. No, we're going to hire a guy who is a puppet to the owner, a meddlesome owner who does not know enough about football, and who has to answer to the eggheads and analytics, the pencil necks there who have too much control. This thing is going to be a disaster. Super Bowl 54. Now, John, in his commentary before, we talked about the LSU Clemson game, and John sees a lot of similarities in this one. He thinks that Pat Mahomes is basically Joe Burrow, and he thinks that the 49ers are basically Clemson. In that the 49ers, you might think, might be a better team, but Mahomes is by far the better player. Okay, I disagree, because college football is not the NFL. It is a different sport. In that case, he's right about that. Those are similar kind of things. But let's talk about some things that are going to happen in this game. All right. Now, if you go back and you watch enough Super Bowls, the first time you might have noticed this is in the Super Bowl between the New England Patriots and the Carolina Panthers after the 2003 season. If you watch that game, that was a very close, hard-fought game for the first half with no scoring. Almost nobody scored. Nobody was moving the ball. Nobody was doing well. And then in the second half, Jake Delhomme and Tom Brady just went nuts and lit up the scoreboard. Why? For the same reason, a similar thing will happen here. I think there actually will be scoring in the first half. I think it'll be a complete shootout in the second half. Why does that happen, you ask? Okay, the Super Bowl is different than a normal game. You have a much longer halftime. So long that sometimes players will actually be given meals. Like a small snack to eat there in between. And what happens in the NFL and football and generally, your big guys get tired first, and especially on your defensive line. All right. Now, I want you to imagine the 49ers' awesome defensive line, and it is an awesome defensive line. It's got 5 first-round picks. 4 of them are starters. I know. And most of them are playing up to their potential, except for Solomon Thomas. And they're almost all very young. All right. So picture yourself as one of these defensive linemen. Here's your chance. You're playing for a world championship. Your hands in the dirt. There's Pat Mahomes. You can't wait to get to him. You're going to play the hardest you've ever played on almost every snap in the first half. All right? You don't know to pace yourself. You're not a 7-year veteran. You have not been in this game before. All right? And so you might get to them early, and then you're even all fired up. The adrenaline will be going through their bodies more than any game they probably ever played. So now you're exhausting yourself. You're getting yourself tired, despite all this talent. By the time the third quarter starts, it feels like the fourth quarter of a game already, because you've had that much actual time in real life, almost, and you're playing harder than you ever have. You've exhausted all your physical resources, and in the fourth quarter, what that means is that they're not going to get a pass rush on Pat Mahomes. Let me repeat that. They will not have a pass rush, no matter how talented they are, on Pat Mahomes in the fourth quarter. Go watch the Carolina New England game. Go watch the Falcons game, the 28-3 game, the weirdest, greatest game in NFL history. Watch that pass rush from the Falcons in that fourth quarter. It was non-existent. It was none.
I don't know if that was as much as the Super Bowl, as much as I think the Patriots had been like 90 plays by the time the fourth quarter started.
Correct.
And that would have been in any game, they would have been tired.
Good point. Let me also tell you this. Andy Reid, the Chiefs head coach, he's known for this. He's always had this reputation. Has driven fans of his team crazy. He does not run the ball. He doesn't want to run the ball. And now he's got almost all his running backs injured. He has his excuse not to run the ball. He didn't have to. He hates it. He loves throwing the ball up. But the problem for him before is that he's done it with quarterbacks like Donovan McNabb Alex Smith, well, now you have the perfect quarterback to throw every down if you want to throw every down. You have this guy who makes plays off platform, on platform, with a rush, without. He's the Joe Burrow of the NFL, except with a cannon arm. It can throw the ball, literally threw the ball out of Arrowhead Stadium on they had an overhead shot from a helicopter where he did this. He can threaten the whole field. He can make plays with his feet. Yeah, he can make throws in a parking lot if he had to, and he's playing at such a high level, reading and processing. This is Andy Reid's dream. And in the fourth quarter, I can't tell you for sure what else is going to happen in this game. In that fourth quarter, Pat Mahomes is going to go crazy. He's going to go crazy, and it's hard for me to pick against the 49ers because they're such a complete team. I think they're almost a dynasty in the making. This is how you want to build your team. You want to have an offensive genius who you don't need Pro Bowl talent for him to get success and execution out of, and invest all your resources on a dominant defense, starting with the defensive line. It's perfect. It's a perfect formula. And 1 year, it might be their year. I don't think it's this year. I think this is the Chiefs' year, because Andy Reid finally has his muse. He has the perfect quarterback for a system, and he has an arsenal of almost Olympic-level speedsters. I think the Chiefs are going to win this game. John?
Yeah.
Who do you think?
Hold on.
Who's going to win?
I think the Chiefs.
Take your glass off. You get the glare.
I think the Chiefs for similar reasons to you.
Okay.
Yeah, I think the pass rush is non-existent. Experienced coaches bring extra defensive linemen for this game. Like Bill Belichick takes 12 defensive linemen for the Super Bowl.
Yeah, he learned.
But both of these coaches, this is their first time experience in the Super Bowl.
No, Reid coached with the Eagles.
Oh yes, he did actually.
Right.
Never mind.
Against
but
Patriots.
There's little experience for this game. I think the pass rush will be dead by the fourth quarter, and that's the 49ers' greatest advantage when you compare them to the Chiefs. Like one-on-one, like who has better at each individual position, probably. And so I think in the fourth quarter, you take away the Niners' biggest advantage, and then that helps the Chiefs' biggest advantage, which is Patrick Mahomes at quarterback.
I'm going to counter. The Niners have a great advantage at defensive line. I would say it's compared to the Chiefs. I mean, the Chiefs have Chris Jones and Frank Clark. You mean his advantage as a team, not compared to the Chiefs, though. Their biggest strength. The Niners' biggest strength defensive line.
Yeah.
I think their biggest strength is that guy in the headset. I think the biggest strength is Kyle Shanahan. And I think that dude can dial up some offense, and this could be a crazy second half.
This will be a shootout because you have two offensive masterminds. These guys both love their tricky offenses, right? They both have they're both going to come out with something crazy, right? Something Philly type where it's just a little wrinkle. They have a lot. They have a lot of time to prepare for this game,
right?
And they know it, and they're going to come out with something crazy, right? They have the talent to perform it. They both have great tight ends. These are probably the two best tight ends in the league.
Agree.
And they're gonna scheme things up. They're gonna scheme guys open, and they have the quarterbacks to make these plays.
And I will say this about the Chiefs: very rarely do I look at a quarterback like I look at Pat Mahomes. And I'm not saying he's the greatest quarterback ever. I'm saying he's playing at a very high level. But okay, get out of here. I'm done with you.
Oh, sorry.
I will say this: John and I were watching a game against the Titans, where the Titans were up. It was the Texans. The Texans were up 24-0 on the Chiefs in Arrowhead. And 24-0, the Texans had the lead. And the Chiefs scored one touchdown just to cut it within 24-7. I mean, still down by 17 points. And you could see the way Holmes was reacting. Pat Mahomes was reacting. Did I say Holmes? The way Pat Mahomes was reacting, he was going nuts. He got the crowd going. He started sprinting up and down the field, getting them into it. And you knew the Texans were in trouble. Me and John looked at each other and said, uh-oh. And I have never seen this in an NFL game. This is why I regard Pat Mahomes this way. They scored 51 points in 32 minutes. Have any of you watching this ever seen an NFL team score 51 points in 32 minutes? We've seen it when Baylor played Stephen F. Austin. This is ridiculous. This is crazy. And they can kick your ass with 19 minutes time of possession. They can put 5, 6, 7 touchdowns on you, getting 22 minutes time of possession. They don't have to run the ball. And that's what I think is going to happen in this game. So an interesting dynamic happened at the Senior Bowl. I think this changed the 2020 draft in a big way. Justin Herbert, Oregon's quarterback, was the big winner at the Super Bowl. He did well in a practice all week. That's the most important thing. He did well in the game. That's also important. It mattered a lot to Al Davis. And he interviewed well, which he was going to do. He's a very impressive individual as a person. He won the Campbell Trophy, which is the academic Heisman. He's well liked by his teammates, kind of shy, kind of introverted. I heard one scout call him an acquired taste. But what does this mean? His ceiling is kind of like that of Matt Ryan or Phillip Rivers. I think Herbert can be a very good quarterback for a long time, and I think he'd be very good. I don't know if he can be great, but he's a very safe pick. You know, this guy is going to be responsible. He's going to come in, and he's going to do everything he's supposed to do. Now, what does that mean for the NFL draft? Stay with me on this. John and I had a discussion before about coaches. And John is young and doesn't know the ways of the world. It was sweet and innocent to hear his response. I said, what do you think a coach's number one job is? And he said to win games, to take care of his kids. In this case, we're talking about college coaches. I said, no. A coach's number one job is this. Don't get fired. Don't get fired. That's his number one job, and that's what almost all of them are thinking about it. Nick Saban isn't thinking about it, and neither is Dabo Swinney. They don't have to. Everyone else almost is thinking about that. Well, NFL executives are the same way. That's the same thing for them. For 22, 24, 26 of these executives, their number one goal is don't get fired. So what's the point with that? The point is that Tua Tagovailoa as a quarterback is a riskier pick. But if you have Tua Tagovailoa and he is healthy and stays healthy, relatively healthy, you can be great. You can be great. You can have a Drew Brees level of talent. That's who he's compared to, and that's who his skill set mirrors, except he's left-handed. Or you can have the guy who you know is going to be able to keep your job for 12 years. And you might win the division a couple times. You make the playoffs quite a bit. You probably never win a Super Bowl. So, and that's also the mentality of loser GMs. I mean, I know these jobs are hard to get there. They're hard to get these jobs, to get to that point. But you're there now. Did you get there to sit on your hands? A lot of them did. Shoot for greatness. Get the great player. Try to win the Super Bowl. It's amazing to me that GMs are like this. And most of the GMs who are like this are picking in the early part of the draft. They're going to be the ones there. The Dave Gettlemans of the world, he's a good example. But because the great GMs are picking at the back end of the draft. So they will have their chances to exercise these picks. And universally, I expect Justin Herbert to be picked before Tua Tagovailoa by almost every one of these because of the safety, because of the certainty. This is how too many, unfortunately, NFL GMs look at their job and their program. Let's be a division contender. Let's make sure we compete for the playoffs every year. The great GMs, the ones who supportive owners and great coaches, they want to win the Super Bowl. And you have a much better chance of winning a Super Bowl with Tua Tagovailoa than Justin Herbert. With Justin Herbert, there's not medical issues like Tua. You have a much better chance of keeping your job. I will say this. I'm not a doctor. I'm not going to pretend to be a doctor. And nobody knows the exact medicals except for the teams that check these players out and whatever news gets leaked out through that. There have been great players, all-timers in NFL history that have been flunked by physicians. Anthony Munoz was flunked by several teams. Larry Allen was flunked by the Green Bay Packers. Hall of Famers, both. Drew Brees could not pass a medical clearance test that would have sent him to the Miami Dolphins with Nick Saban. If you can imagine how that would have changed the course of NFL and college history, it's crazy that one doctor saying this, who was clearly wrong, what it would have done to both sports. But you don't know if Tua is going to be Drew Brees or if he's going to be one of the ones who they're actually correct about. When they look at his hip and he could be a Bo Jackson type of injury where he can't really play football ever again. And it's an art as much as a science. Medicine is. That much I know. Now, if I had any kind of choice, if I was GM, I'd take Tua because he is the higher upside player. I would always do that. But I'm not an NFL GM. Let's talk about Todd Graham, new head coach of the Hawaii Rainbow Warriors. Graham's interesting. He's got a long time history with Texas football. Not very well liked by a lot of people, honestly. Coach Rice for 1 year went to Tulsa. At his press conference, being introduced as Tulsa head coach, he said Tulsa was his dream job. After 4 years, he leaves Tulsa and goes to Pitt. At his introductory press conference at Pitt, he says Pitt was his dream job. 1 year later, he leaves his dream job at Pitt. He goes to Arizona State. Guess what he said at his introductory news conference, John?
It's his dream job.
It's his dream job. He's got a lot of dream jobs.
Wow.
So he was at Arizona State. Now, Graham has a defensive background. And it's kind of weird when you see them play because the way they played at Arizona State, you might not think so because they ran hyper tempo. They were one of the fastest paced teams in America. And they blitzed like crazy. They blitzed all the time. They're really fun to watch. They pulled some big upsets, blew out Notre Dame one time in Tempe. But teams started kind of adjusting to his scheme. Teams kind of started to figure him out. And the pressure got less and less and less every year. And when you blitz all the time and you send a lot of zero blitzes and you're not getting home, you're going to get killed. And that's what they started. They started giving up points. And eventually, he was fired as head coach of the Sun Devils. But, man, he's doing something right. Because he got the head coach job at Hawaii, which is, it's a great place to live, but it's a difficult place to coach. But he gets to live there, and Arizona State's still paying his full buyout. He gets his full buyout and gets a head coaching salary from Hawaii. That's a $12.8 million buyout to live in Hawaii. Man, maybe I was wrong about coaches being fired.
At his dream job.
Holy cow! As far as I know, he did not say Hawaii was his dream job in the introductory press conference. That's a good point. But maybe I was wrong the whole time I was telling you about not getting fired. I mean, if that was my gig, give me $12 million to get fired and live in Hawaii. Fire me.
And coach your dream job.
And coach your dream job.